right, so welcome everybody to our second episode of the AI Business Catalyst podcast series. My name is Deirdre Caren, and I'm one of the co-hosts for these podcast sessions. We will be running them over the year. We have 20 guest speakers that have been identified, and last week we spoke to 8, so we had a panel conversation which set the scene for the rest of the speakers. So it'll be run every fortnight, and there are breaks, mid-year breaks from mid-July to end of August. So just to let you know who's in our panel. So Omar Gawad he's a strategist, an architect. He also has been an analyst and played a key role in the chapters of the IABA. He helps organizations share their digital strategy and transformation capabilities. He's passionate about trusted business solutions, emerging technologies, and continuous learning. He thrives on creative, impact-driven strategies that enhance business and everyday lives. Besides doing the podcast with us, he also has his own newsletter called The Analyst Architect, which you will find on YouTube, as well as the newsletter on LinkedIn. So thanks for joining us again, Omar, and organizing the great questions we have for our speakers. Next, we have Alain Picard. So Alain is the Chief Architect and CTO at Aiden.ai, where he leverages artificial intelligence to transform enterprises. A distinguished programmer and technical visionary, he designs innovative software solutions tailored to customer needs. As the founder of Iris Business Architecture, he enhances business architecture practices and streamlines project delivery, establishing himself as a leader in the AI industry, as well as the enterprise architecture industry. Alan is really good programmer. And then myself, my name is Deirdre Caren. I am the CEO and co-founder of Aiden.ai, and I believe that artificial intelligence is definitely going to change the future of business transformation. I focus on unlocking the full potential of generative AI through tailored training and architecture. I also run Agora Insights, which I have been doing now for 8 years, where I train business analysts and business architects and help them get certified. And we have thousands of students in nearly 100 countries. So I've got to say over 90 countries. So pretty pleased about that. And finally, but last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker today, Omar. Omar is the CEO and co-founder of Monta AI, an accomplished AI executive with over 15 experience in building and scaling machine learning. So pretty impressive, which is why we have him as a guest today. Also has various leadership roles in multinational companies, successfully establishing AI functions that generate multi-million-dollar revenues. As the Global Director of AI at Esri, the leader of Geographic Information Systems, Omar built the Geo AI team and delivered impactful projects worldwide, significantly advancing the company's AI capabilities and product offerings. So super pleased to have you, Omar. Really happy that you're part of our team today and sharing your experience. So let's get started. So what we're going to do today is we're going to really focus on clarity in AI. As we go through the different themes of what does AI mean for architects and analysts across the world, we want to get clarity. So we'll look at essential questions around artificial intelligence, like what exactly is AI, how does it function, what are the different types of AI here and there, and how can businesses leverage it, and look at particular case study. Over to our panel. Let's start off with some misconceptions first. What is the general view of business around AI and its adoption?
AI is definitely a buzzword right now, especially since the launch of ChatGPT 2 years ago, right? And honestly, before that, it was absolutely a buzz. I remember delivering a TEDx talk actually, about 5 months, 6 months before the launch of ChatGPT. I think it was titled Leveraging or making use of the AI tsunami. Back then, even before the ChatGPT moment, AI was still big, right? And I've been working in AI for the past 15 years. And when it comes to business, there are different ways that businesses look into AI, right? And in general, I think we can look into different forms of maturity. I would say if we start from the top, there is on the top 1, 3, 4%, whatever, who are like super mature. They understand exactly how they need to use the AI. They understand the use cases. They've been using it in production for many years. They are seeing significant ROI in terms of cost saving, revenue boosting, etc. They have centralized AI teams and diffused AI champions across the org. They're using it in core and non-core functions, you name it. And then I would say there is another level of businesses who have been deploying AI in production, but in 1 or 2 or 3 main use cases, right? And I would say this is the majority of companies or businesses who have been looking into AI. And then, at least in my opinion, not less than 40% who have been playing around with AI, right? Like trying some pilots here, some POCs there, which is fantastic, by the way, to get the ball rolling. But they're still trying to find that use case that's going to really deliver value. So one thing I learned the hard way throughout these years, that it's very easy to get caught in the tech and forget about the business value. And that's why it's extremely important to start from the business first and understand what kind of ROI exactly are we looking at, and then work your way backwards. So I think in general, to answer your question, there are so many shapes and forms that businesses look into AI, but I think there are different levels of maturity. And one key aspect I've seen to help quantify such maturity is how much ROI are you getting from AI today, and what's your ability to quantify this ROI?
Omar, if we look at the different types of AI and how they are being used in business, can you give us a brief description of those different types of AI and kind of the basic classification that can be used here?
So the term AI in itself was coined, I think, in the 50s. And it's a big term, right? The whole essence of it is building machines or computers that can achieve similar levels of intelligence as humans, right? And then there is machine learning, which is a subfield of AI. And it's about computers learning from data instead of being given explicit rules. And that has been around for a while as well. And then the rising star deep learning, which has been around theoretically since decades, but then it started shining around 2012, 2013, something like that, which is a specific field of machine learning using deep neural networks, which is an algorithm that is trying to mimic the way the human brain works, using neurons and synapses and connections and stuff like that. And it has been very good with dealing with unstructured data. So that's in terms of the terms. So AI, the idea of achieving human level intelligence, obviously we're not there yet. Machine learning is a subfield of AI that's about learning from data. And deep learning is one class of machine learning that's about using deep neural networks and it's really been excelling in handling unstructured data like videos and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to the patterns of use cases, you can generally look into 6 major patterns. The first one is predictive analytics. I think it's the most common and the most valuable today. And you can look at different shapes and forms of that. Banks, for example, using machine learning to predict the next best product to promote or to offer to customers and cross and upselling. Amazon, for example, using recommendation engines to recommend products and stuff like that. Netflix using the same thing to recommend movies, X to recommend tweets, and so forth. And there are so many examples of predictive analytics, trying to predict, for example, when a machine is going to fail. For example, this one is pretty common in industries like manufacturing, predicting the best campaign to send to customers, predicting the best movie, predicting the stock price movement. Obviously, very challenging, right? So that's one, I would say, major area of applications. And then you can look into another pattern like computer vision. I've worked a lot in computer vision, and it's basically about having computers that can see and understand what's in images, videos, LiDAR, etc. For example, one of the projects I'm really proud that I've worked on was a project with the Department of Defense in the United States in partnership with other entities around disaster response. Unfortunately, in the United States, hurricanes happen, like Hurricane Michael, for example, and so forth. And God forbids when that happens, a lot of damage happened to buildings and roads and stuff like that. So classically, the army was using satellite imagery and aerial imagery and having a lot of people go through the images to understand which houses were damaged, which roads were damaged, and so forth. Now, with my team, we built a system that can use deep learning to detect damaged houses and damaged buildings and damaged roads, and integrate this with geographic information systems to really find out which structures have been impacted the most very quickly in a matter of hours versus like weeks, and put together a comprehensive plan for rescue for those who most in need by understanding which routes are passable and so forth. So that was using computer vision, if you think about it, using AI that can see what's in the image, right? And there are so many examples about that.
And
So that's the form, this is called change management. And it's very classical in geospatial intelligence to have the pre and post and do these kind of comparisons. And classically, it has been using non-AI algorithms. But then when I was in Esri, we worked on a lot of algorithms that is using deep learning to make this even better, right? And it has a lot of applications. For example, you can do that obviously for disaster response and damage detection. You can do it to understand from an agriculture perspective, the land cover change, which land has changed from a certain like grass to concrete and stuff like that. And then you can find a lot of retailers, for example, using it to understand the shelves, which products are missing from the shelf to automate the replenishment. Obviously, self-driving cars are using that heavily. You can find applications like in medicine, scanning X-rays and CT scans to find, God forbid, tumors and stuff like that. So that's another class of that. So we mentioned predictive analytics and then computer vision. Another famous one is anomaly detection, which is the ability to find abnormalities in the data. A famous example is credit card theft. I'm sure all of you have received those SMSs. Hey, are you using the credit card? And you need to go and validate and stuff like that. So that is probably using some form of anomaly detection, because here you don't have a lot of historical data for thefts, but you need to find the statistically significant abnormalities that would indicate that this is not probably Alan making that transaction, right?
But I think they need to improve those things, because they charge us to the same company every month. The amount changes a bit, and every month they're asking me if it's my purchase. So I think they still have a little way to go. But you covered a lot of areas for the types of AI. Do you have some that are more specific to what really businesses are doing with AI? So you covered a few with the predictive analysis, not much that seems to go use the large language models for more generic type of task.
Absolutely. And actually that was coming. When I mentioned 6 patterns, generative AI was one of those 6. In summary, with predictive analytics, computer vision, generative AI, which obviously overlaps a little with some of those like computer vision. And then we have anomaly detection, we have clustering, and we have NLP, which is, again, it's the foundation of LLMs. So LLMs and generative AI is obviously the big deal right now. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone is talking about agents. We're going to see some demos today. And some of the practical use cases we're seeing today is, I would say the number one is the employee co-pilot use case, right? And that is something we at Monta AI is implementing heavily with government entities and private sectors. And the idea is simple. Think of it as your personal ChatGPT on top of your enterprise data, right? So we're working with some government entities. They have thousands of documents, PowerPoints, Excel, PDFs. Some of them are scanned images, etc., voice memos, you name it. And you'd like to extract a lot of insights out of those. The challenge is, it's not that easy to throw this at ChatGPT or even Microsoft Copilot, because once you hit a certain threshold from the amount of files, you're going to need some intelligence to be able to extract that. So what we are seeing is different companies are interested in bringing LLMs internally as a form of employee co-pilots or assistants that can sit up top of enterprise data, and any employee in any department can use them to automate a lot of the day-to-day tasks. So that's one major use case, I'd say, Alan. The other main use case we're seeing is obviously agents. We're going to talk a lot about those today, which is taking this one step further from just information retrieval to doing actions. We are working with some clients in the US, for example, to build corporate due diligence agents that can help with validating whether that person graduated from that university or they have crime reports. And that agent needs to interact with so many systems and understand which APIs to use. We're building some other agents for companies who are interested in analyzing large-scale RFPs, requests for proposals, and automate the process of writing the proposals. And they need to integrate with a lot of enterprise data. So I can go on these, but I just want to stop here and see if there's...
Very good.
Actually, I will build up on what you mentioned, Omar, related to the misconceptions and what are the different types of AI. But until now, a lot of organizations, they want to integrate AI in their businesses. But to be honest, they often underestimate what is takes behind the scenes. Can you walk us through what's really needed to enable AI within the organization and what actually happens when the AI makes a decision behind the scenes?
Absolutely. And again, that's a super big question. We can spend entire hours talking about that.
Yeah.
But here's the gist of it. The non-AI aspects are usually the hardest when deploying large-scale AI systems. And by non-AI, I can refer generally to two things. One is technical, the other is not. So for the non-technical, we can start with that. There is a lot of change management and process engineering that you need to do. The moment you start introducing an agent that automates a lot of the tasks for some of your employees, you got to find out what those employees are going to do next. I keep getting the question from employees a lot of times like, hey, are we going to be replaced, etc.? The answer is no. We just need to figure out how you're going to elevate what you're doing already. Imagine that you have installed wings and you can fly now. So it doesn't make sense to keep walking, right? So there is, and within that sphere of non-technical stuff, there is management buy-in, process engineering, employee training and onboarding and stuff like that. Now, for the technical stuff, there is I would say, AI is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath, there is a lot of software engineering, for example. So the moment you start moving from the pilot stage to the production, you got to figure out things like security, for example, right? We do a lot of work with security, how to make sure that only the access rights. So when you ask a question to the assistant or the agent, if you don't have access to that data, you should not be able to access it. So you got to manage a lot of access rights, firewalls, protecting from DDoS attacks, and encryption and compliance with a lot of the security regulations. We work in so many countries, and these countries have different regulations in security, and it's a first-class citizen, right? The data pipelines, so making sure you have a steady flow of data coming from different sources, and the kind of transformations and cleansing you're going to need to prepare this for the agentic workflows. That's another thing. The front end, the back end, the security, how to scale with thousands and tens of thousands of users. You see, all of what I've just mentioned, none of which is related to AI. AI is usually the nice, fancy piece. Don't get me wrong, it's hard still. But what I want to say is there are so many aspects that are usually not that visible, like the ones that I mentioned. And when you hit the ground with real large-scale enterprise AI systems, those are usually what you need to take care of.
Yeah, thank you, Omar, for this. What is the role of the business in implementing or integrating AI in the operating model, let's say?
I think the business should be driving, to be honest. I just got that question from one of the top banking customers that we work with. And they were asking me, Omar, from an organizational structure perspective, do you think we should be leading? And I was talking to a business group, some business leads or the IT should be leading on this. I said confidently, the business should absolutely be leading. And I think the number one priority is to define the use case. But in order to define the right use cases, you got to have a baseline understanding of what AI is and how it works. And for that, some kind of education is needed, and hence this kind of webinar we're doing. So I think, generally speaking, business has multiple things to do. One is to define the charter, like where are we going? What kind of use cases are we going to work on? That's one thing. Second is to secure the budget. So this kind of work, we're going to need to hire, we're going to need to partner, buy software, buy the cloud, get some GPUs, etc. So figure out the budget and allocate it. And three, have some sort of mechanisms to keep checking on performance. Are we hitting the marks? Are we generating the right ROI? Do we need to pivot? And by the way, you got to be super agile in this journey, right? It's not going to work waterfall. You got to have the mindset of, hey, I'm going to start with something. I'm going to discover things as I go to the ground and I keep changing. So there are so many things that business could do, but I think on top of my mind, defining the use cases, securing the budget, having the checks to check for performance, and bringing everyone together, because it's definitely a team sport.
So if we continue in that vein, what do you see as the biggest barriers that companies are facing? Is there mostly data quality, talent, uncertainty in the face of getting to ROI, or not knowing even where to start with their proof of concepts, or basically taking care of the non-AI part, really, that's all the regular software engineering portion of it. And also getting aligned, as you were mentioning, with how to address the software issues with personnel and reworking their processes and so on.
I can talk about a couple of things. I think so many businesses are trying right now. So they are piloting, experimenting, and trying things with ChatGPT or playing with the APIs and stuff like that. I think one of the main challenges I see is that kind of transition from the pilot stage to the production stage, right? Because again, that requires a lot of non-AI aspects, the software engineering and figuring out the specific ROI and getting the buy-in and getting the budget and so forth. That's where I see a lot of companies stuck, because I think the hype is real and I think everyone is excited and I think management are pushing like, hey, let's do that. And I think there are so many POCs, but then how many of those POCs make their way to the other side as a production level solution? And for that to happen, I think it brings us to the second point, which is talent. You hit the nail on the head. The challenge with that kind of AI that we are talking about today, generative AI and LLMs, it's moving so fast, man. Not sure if you guys have seen Manus AI. It was released from a Chinese company, I think maybe a week ago or something like that. And it's all over the place. And before Manus, there was like, we can see all the stuff coming up from Quen, from Alibaba, and before that, Operator from OpenAI and GPT 4.5 and DeepSeek. And like literally every day, there is something new. And the challenge with that is it's so overwhelming. Like it's overwhelming in terms of what kind of talent do we need to have and how do you attract those talent and retain those talent. And today you gotta, it's like about fine tuning the models. Tomorrow it's about agents. After tomorrow, it's about, hey, we can just grab those APIs. So I think the landscape is moving so fast. And honestly, I don't think there's a silver bullet here, but I think those organizations are gonna figure out like, hey, we're just gonna keep evolving and be super agile. And we are so determined on bringing in the right team and growing it and changing it as needed. Those are the ones who are going to be able to cross the chasm from the POC to production, right? Because there are very few number of people today who understand software engineering, large language models, data science to understand how to do the error analysis and run the experiment M's. So we got to bring the right team, and that team needs to be diverse. Some with LLM backgrounds, some with software engineering backgrounds, some with backend. So I think crossing the chasm from POC to production is one challenge. Finding the right talent is another challenge. Finding the right use case, to be honest, is a major challenge because it's easy to get distracted by all the noise. And there is no easy way to find the use case. Honestly, like I think the only way to find the right use case is to involve the business people early on, educate them on AI, and have them partner up with AI experts to figure out those. So I think those are the top three challenges I've been seeing so far. Obviously, there is a fourth challenge, which is securing GPUs for those who need on-premise solutions. I've seen this in some environments because as like GPUs are a little scarce right now, but unless you need to deploy on-premise, you can always go to the cloud. So those are like 3 to 4 challenges I'm seeing today.
But do you see also challenges in terms, one of the things I mentioned was data quality in terms of the ability to trust the result. You were talking about managing things like for disaster, probably with FEMA, or you said the Army, where you cannot make too many mistakes, or you have to trust what you're getting. If businesses are using that to, it's one thing to propose the wrong thing on Amazon and recommend the wrong product. There's not, maybe you don't get the sale, but there's no other cost. But if you end up trusting a way of doing an investment, or you're talking about medical stuff, or you think you have found a cancer that does not exist, you might be operating on somebody for no reason at all.
Yep.
What do you see as the barrier to trust?
Well, that's a very important question. Let's see. Let's take this. You touched on a very important aspect, and I think I want to get back to a question that Omar asked. And I apologize, Omar, I forgot to answer that question, which is about trusting the agents on making decisions, because I'm going to link that question to what Alan just mentioned about data quality. So first of all, I think the degree of trust is definitely impacted by the potential impact of the insight or the decision to be made based on the insight extracted by the AI. For example, when we talk medical and health, it's definitely different than retail and cross and upselling, different than marketing, different than national security. The more the stakes are high, I think the more need to bring more scrutiny to the AI workflows and stuff like that. So I don't think agents are going to fly, for example, easily in some spaces soon, like health, taking decisions in the legal space, for example. It can help a lot in the legal space in terms of paralegal analysis, but taking the decision, that still requires a lot of humans. National security is another domain, etc. So first of all, let's establish that I think the evolution of agents specifically is going to shine in industries where the cost of the decision is not so high, right? So for example, promoting a certain product or booking a ticket, for example, is definitely less serious than running a surgery, right? So that's the kind of industry. But then if we bypass that and talk in general, what we are seeing today is not only about the data quality, but crafting the right workflow to make sure that we are extracting the right insight needed here. Because sometimes it's not just about retrieving the information from the data. Maybe you have multiple versions of the data. Which version are you going to trust? So we're working with a government client right now who are trying to extract insights out of consulting material. And there are so many different versions of these consulting material coming from different vendors and different dates. So we're building together that implicit framework that, hey, the more this material is coming from a big name, company X or Y, it's going to have more weight. The more this material is coming, is a recent one, last year, we're going to prioritize it against one from 10 years ago. So we are building that, we are craving this inside the workflow itself. And obviously there is the guardrail aspect, right? So generative AI is a little different than classical predictive analytics that operate on structured data. With structured data, there is a list of data quality things you need to take care of. Handling missing values, making sure you deal with duplicates, making sure you have one source of truth, integrated data, etc. With generative AI, I think the challenges are slightly different. You got to deal with hallucinations, for example, right? You got to do a lot of things to reduce hallucinations. That's one thing. The other thing is you got to bump up your guardrails. I'm sure you have all seen these examples where someone is buying a car for $1 and through a chatbot and stuff like that. You have to establish very strong guardrails to identify which questions could be answered, which are not, which are safe to answer, which are not, and stuff like that. And you got to have this kind of pipeline that integrates data from multiple sources and do the needed transformations. What if you are trying to extract data from complicated diagrams or charts or tables? Those require extra processing, for example. So data quality is absolutely needed. It's a little different in generative AI, and it introduces other aspects like what I just mentioned as well.
Okay. Well, thanks for that answer.
So we've spoken about big business and obviously data and having all the shadowware and all of the history of data, and generally it's been quite poor. But what about small business? And also, I heard, and I don't know when or what the source was, but they're waiting for the first billionaire single owner business to use things like agents and generative AI and so forth. So there's a lot that can be done around the business operating model, what it is, especially for small businesses and for startups. So what is your view on that in terms of the future of what this looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Sam Altman who said I think the kind of the goal of one day it's gonna be $1 billion one person company or something like that. Which honestly, I don't think it's impossible. I think it's attainable at some point in the future, given the progress we're seeing. I see AI adoption usually there is a lot of low-hanging fruits. I keep preaching AI all day. I speak with my wife's friends and the parents of my son's friends and stuff like that. I think there is an opportunity for anyone, any business, however small it is, etc. And let us take some examples. If you just look at the level of the ChatGPTs of the world, like if you are a small business and you are only using ChatGPT, there is a huge value in that. Only if you're using ChatGPT, even the free version, not talking about $20 per month, right? Because if you think about it as a smart assistant that can help you on so many things, it can help you on planning for your business. Let's say you have a merchandise retail, you want to put a plan for marketing. You can tell it like, this is what I'm doing, this is the market I'm operating at, and help me understand my customer persona, help me put a marketing plan, help me put together some marketing material, come up with some ideas so I can sell more. You can extract you can deal with the AI like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, even the free versions, as a smart assistant that can help you on this kind of brainstorming, planning, writing emails, coming up with marketing content and so forth. And this is cross-cutting across everyone, right? Now, level 2 is start to use some of these tools that are AI enabled to accelerate your work. And I would say level 3, you can start creating custom GPTs. And by the way, everything that I'm mentioning is mostly below like $20 per month, and anyone can do it without a technical background. Now, once you do all these things, and there is a spectrum of use cases that could be covered, now you can start thinking about building your own system or getting a company to build you something, which I don't think is going to be required for a lot of the small businesses because of those so many low-hanging fruits. But my 2 cents here is you absolutely need to start. You have to expose yourself to these tools. You have to learn. The problem I see therein is most of the people are so busy in their day-to-day and they don't have the bandwidth for this. But honestly, I think just 20 minutes per day or half an hour is enough. And guess what? You're going to see a lot of value when you start doing so.
Let's talk about regulation. Obviously, it varies from country to country, but where is our regulations going? What are the different policies, and what's the impact on businesses of all of those things? And how should business deal with that?
So usually when regulations are mentioned in the context of AI, I would say there are two types of regulations usually, or two main buckets, right? There is the classical bucket of existing regulations about data privacy, data confidentiality, data residency, for example, for some countries on the level of government, the data cannot leave the country, etc. What else? Things related to security and so forth. And that is happening a lot. We're seeing it in a lot of countries. And then there is another bucket of regulation, which is like people speaking about, should you have any regulations for the potential job impact, for example? Should we have regulations for safety for AI companies building very large models to have some sort of safety controls and so forth? Let's start with ethics. I think it's very important to validate if the AI you're using is biased or not, because we have seen so many examples where there are so many different shapes and forms of bias. So we got to test that heavily to see if it's biased against a certain dimension and make sure it's not, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is there are so many things related to the copyrights in the age of AI, right? For example, we are working with a government customer and they are hosting so many different data forms on their platform. And one thing they are considering is whether they should bring material from major publications to ingest in their platform and enable their users to access the derivatives of it. So that's a question. Who owns the copyright here? Is that even legal? Right? So do they need to take an explicit approval from the owners of the data? Even if they got, who owns the derivative from the data? If you ask a question and get a report out of it, for example, do the customer own that, the original creator, or the prompt engineer who owns that? So I think IP is a major thing, and copyrights, we get a lot of friction to that one, right? That's another example. Data privacy is another thing. In some of the countries we operate in, there are so many restrictions related to the privacy and dealing with personally identifiable information, PII. So any kind of application you're building with a government entity, if it has addresses or phone numbers or emails or any personal information, there are very strict rules on storing this data in the country and not hosting it on external cloud, maybe an internal cloud in the country, but not external. So I think any business needs to take care of personal identifiable information as well, because guess what? There is a chance that this information leaks into one of the LLMs, and if it's get retrained with it, if you're not explicitly opting out from this capability, for example, you can find that your data is publicly available for everyone, which is a catastrophe, right?
Omar, building up on what you mentioned and the fantastic use cases that you already mentioned before, we often hear a lot of theoretical discussions about AI, especially with the clients. They want to integrate AI in everything and they don't have a clear use case. Can you share with us a concrete example of a business that successfully implemented AI? And what are, from my perspective, the most important thing, what are the key success factors for this business that helped this business implement this kind of use case or AI?
Absolutely. First of all, I can share with you 44 success stories, not just one. We have compiled this in a nice sheet that we're going to show today from major companies in pharma, finance, banking, etc. And all are examples of people who have successfully deployed their in production. But I can share with you a concrete example for a customer that we worked with. It was a major company working in the HR outsourcing business. And they were in the business of helping other companies establish or hire in other countries. So if you're a multinational company, you don't need to go to a certain country and establish a legal entity and pay taxes and so forth. You can just contract directly that other company. And they were getting a lot of questions from their potential clients about taxation, social insurance, and a lot of things related to how to hire in these countries. And they were taking hours and sometimes days to get back to their clients with answers, because the answers of those questions were in so many different laws and regulations that keep changing in hundreds and thousands of pages. We built for them a legal copilot deployed in production that can read the email, understand the questions, retrieve the answers from those so many different sources, compose the email for them, summarize it, and the person should just send the email or modify a little in it. And that saved them about 400x time savings. This case study is documented on our website, and that was a clear use case for saving massive amount of time with AI, which obviously translated into cost cutting. It translated into gaining more business, onboarding more customers, boosting the experience of the customers, because we have built an externally facing chatbot where our customer could expose to their clients as well to answer them 24/7 about common questions and stuff like that. I think that was a clear cut, clear ROI, and the customer was happy with it. But I think there are endless examples as well.
Yeah, sure. I have seen this example, by the way, on the website. But from your perspective, can you conclude the key success factors that led to this successful implementation and this ROI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one was definitely the deep involvement of the business from day zero. The reason we started that use case is we had a series of workshops to brainstorm use cases and explore the ROI of use cases. And to be totally honest, I didn't have any clue about that use case. Like I didn't imagine that use case, even though I read a lot about the business and understand something about it. But they were the ones who came up with that use case. Once we started introducing generative AI and LLMs and showed them different examples, they said, Omar, you know what? Maybe we can use that to answer the complicated legal questions that we keep facing with our clients. So I think that was like a major factor, which is again, like your involvement to the business first approach towards adopting AI, right? So that was one thing. I think the other thing was the agility, because we didn't build that system in a day and night. That system kept evolving. We did a proof of concept first. We gave them the proof of concept. They kept trying it. They came up with some feedback. We found the system performing nicely in a bunch of questions, not performing nicely in a certain class of questions. We started troubleshooting. We implemented some customizations. We got back to them. They tried. They gave us feedback. So I think making these rapid iterations was another success. And they had the right mindset towards dealing with AI. Some customers, unfortunately, if they don't succeed from the first couple of attempts, they get a little disappointed. And it's very important to have that, I would say, stamina in trying things with AI, because I guarantee you, it's not going to work from the first try, for sure. It's a very evolving thing. You got to keep providing that feedback, optimizing the model, troubleshooting, and so forth. So I think that was another major factor. So I think business first approach, having the stamina to keep trying things and so forth was another thing. And the agility was three main factors towards that success.
Perfect. In your opinion, when we talk about stamina, especially in the governmental entities, how governments can foster AI innovation or AI implementations while maintaining this stamina? Because in the governmental entities, sometimes they don't have this luxury of.
I like the questions you guys ask, because we can literally take a dedicated webinar about each one. Right? And one challenge I'm facing is how to carefully choose my words to really answer in 2 to 3 minutes. Oh man,
Everything is counted.
Exactly. One major difference from government from private sector is as you hit the nail on the head, Omar. They don't usually have the mechanics of trying things out. You don't have the luxury of failure, right? You promise the higher ups with something, you got to do it. Period. And guess what? That doesn't work with AI because you don't know what you don't know. You got to do some experiments first to find out what is feasible, what is not, what works, what not, and then based on that, you define what is next. And unfortunately, that mechanism is not available today, that vehicle, that experimentation vehicle. So if you ask me, and I keep saying that since my days in the US, by the way, because I see it across all governments, like there is no exception here. Governments needs to have a way for a fail-safe way of fast experimentation. That's not usually how governments work. They allocate a budget, they issue tenders, there is a winner, you got to do it. That doesn't work. You got to have some piloting phases. You got to have some mechanism to give small chunks of investments to some companies to try things out, have clear success criteria, and you try out 4, 5, 6 experiments. You kill 5 and you proceed with 1. So having this kind of accelerator or experimentation engine, I think it's absolutely critical to have. I think that's the number one thing. And then the rest is easy, I would say. Usually it's a combination between having a clear directive from the top, but having a clear AI strategy and motivation and encouraging the employees to pursue it, and departments, and have the needed KPIs and the needed rewarding mechanisms for different government entities who are gonna. And by the way, the United Arab Emirates, I'm not sure if you guys are following, is setting an excellent example here. They have a dedicated chief AI officer in every single government entity, right? And they have very clear mandates on every government entity to adopt AI and so forth. Saudi Arabia is following the same lines. And then having this kind of grassroots movement, the bottom-up training, enablement tools, access to technology. There are so many things that could help governments adopt AI, but I think having the right experimentation engine, especially from a tendering, budgeting perspective, and having some sort of a top, bottom, and bottom up approaches is going to be essential and rewarding. I think in government, especially, because in government, you don't have, like in business, it's clear. You're profit driven, you want to save money or boost revenue, etc. Government, they don't necessarily want to do that, but they want to make their citizens happier. They want to make their services better. But in my opinion, in order to encourage that, you have to set a rewarding mechanism for encouraging and recognizing government entities who successfully adopt AI.
That's awesome. Thanks, Omar and Omar. So our final question before our presentation, and then we'll open the floor to our guests that are here. So we all come from an architectural background, analysts and architects, and we are looking at AI as architecting AI. So you spoke about these use cases, being able to test and fail fast and do those kind of things. We've also spoken about data. So data is a real problem in many organizations. When we structure architecture, we have things like capability models and information concepts. And so we have abstract concepts that frame the organization, which really helps with large language models and knowledge graphs and various other things, because it shows how the relationships work. So what are your thoughts around enterprise architecture being part of the team to really look at AI? Because one of the big challenges you said at the very beginning was businesses, we really need to understand the business first, right? Which is what business architects do. And so how do the technology specialists, how do the machine learning specialists, how do the business stakeholders, and how do the architects work together in order to come up with what would be a good solution for that business?
Absolutely. I think business architects are very well positioned to be the leaders of these AI movements, period, right? Because they're the ones who understand the business, they are the ones who understand the technology. They can manage to understand what the heck is AI and bring everyone together to have a business first approach towards adopting AI, right? And I think given that embedded already and they have the needed vehicles and tools and mindset to understand the business and to understand the different mechanics and tactics to break down strategies into objectives and mobilize teams and so forth, I think it's just a matter of getting business architects to really get exposed to what AI is and how it works and stuff like that. And once they do that, I think the natural evolution of business architects to be AI champions, to be honest, right? And by AI champions, I think of them as those heroes who are going to bring everyone together to a common ground. Hey, business people, guess what? There is very nice that could be used in this and that use case. And hey, AI people, there are these business cases that needs to be implemented. Can you help us understand if it's feasible or not? So running that conversation requires these kind of mediators. And I think business architects are very well poised to fill that void, I would say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and great, because that's what we think, but we also don't want to have confirmation bias in this whole process. Okay, Omar, we'd love to see what you have to show us around the agents, the agentic approaches, and so forth. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen. And thank you so much. You've been awesome in just sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Okay. In last year, 2024, McKinsey has that article, Why Agents Are the Next Frontier of Generative AI. And I think they were right. Agents have been exploding since then. Everyone's talking about agents. I'm sure you hear about them. And this is someone who has been summarizing one of the sessions they attended at YC, Y Combinator, one of the biggest accelerators worldwide. Many major unicorns came up from YC, Airbnb and so forth. And he was summarizing what he has seen in terms of what YC is interested at. And you can see that agents are being mentioned 4 or 5 times in this summary. And that was mentioned on Twitter, by the way, that vertical AI agents was a top priority for them, building AI that would replace specific job functions, not just assisting humans, but fully automating work, etc. And I know people freak out when they hear that, but I think it's important to have a balanced approach of looking into this. I think it's absolutely going to happen that entire job functions or specific duties are going to be replaced. But at the same time, I think it's going to create a lot of new jobs and new professions. But the key phrase here is being so agile and fast. And agents, in a nutshell, are forms of AI that use large language models as their brains for reasoning and planning. But the main thing about agents is that they can take actions. There are different definitions of agents, but I think the most important one is an agent is an AI that can take an action. And by taking an action, sending an email, booking an appointment, running a query, booking a ticket, and so forth. And for agents to take action, they have to be connected to the external world, aka tools. They need to be able to use Google search or Python or APIs or Wolfram Alpha and so forth. And they need to have some sort of memory, short-term and long-term memory, to understand what they've been doing on the short term, what has been done in the past, and orchestrate actions based on that. And generally speaking, an agent is a big problem divided into sub-problems. Each problem would have potentially its own agent and so forth. So let's put all these riddles aside and theory. Let's jump into action. I want to show you a bunch of examples for things we're working on. For example, the sales assistant agent. There are so many websites that include a lot of data about leads. So if you are in the business of lead gen, you go to websites like Apollo, for example, or Zoom Info or whatever, and you start searching for leads and qualify them and see what leads they're looking for and engage them and so forth. And one website is apollo.io, and Apollo has an API. So we've built an AI that can automate a lot of the work that a sales development representative would do in terms of finding the right leads, doing the research about them, getting that data from Apollo by understanding which APIs to use. And that's the secret word here, right? Instead of a human going to the website and looking for leads, we can have the AI does that. But in order for it to do that, it has to be able to understand which APIs to use and when to use them and what functions to call and so forth. And run the entire process from the lead search to qualification to doing the investigations to filtering out to actually understanding which content to share with them, writing an email, reaching out, and booking an appointment. So let's see an example for this. First, we're going to start by, let's say I am targeting product managers in Texas in a leadership position. So I'm telling it here, find people in Texas with a leadership role in product companies making more than $10 million a year. So it's going to use the APIs for Apollo.io. It's going to come back with these leads. It's going to summarize what each lead is. And we can validate this in a leadership position in a company based in Texas. And Apollo has the information that this company is making more than $10 million and so forth. Now, I might need to fine tune the results. Like I want to have companies who has more than 30 employees, for example. So it's going to go and filter out the companies and get me leads from companies with more than 30 employees. Again, I can accelerate this a little. It's going to come back. I can click on any of them and go to the company info and to validate that they truly have more than 30 employees. We can see here that we open the company on LinkedIn and the company has from 1 to 5,000 employees, right? And you might think, what's the big deal here? I can just, as a human, I can just go and do that. Now, imagine if you have tens of agents doing this 24/7 on so many leads and running these campaigns in the background. Now, what kind of efficiency you can gain? Now here, we have reached a final list of leads and we want the agent to reach out. Here's the thought process. It's retrieving information about each candidate and getting their email and what the company is doing and so forth. It's choosing 3 use cases from our use case gallery, right? Because we have a use case gallery of different use cases in AI. Imagine we're an AI company, need to sell its AI products, right? It's going to generate a meeting link and craft a super personalized email to that person. As you can see here, the subject is unlock the power of generative AI for Blue Fire Insurance. And it's writing an email that is hyper-personalized. It's selecting 3 use cases from our use case gallery with a link to one of them. And it's recommending or actually proposing to have a meeting and have a link to book the meeting. And it can keep having the conversation until a meeting is booked. Now, imagine if you woke up each day with a fresh set of leads with booked meetings that has been qualified, and you can have an agent on top of that that has the initial conversation, by the way, with the customer or the lead in that case, to further qualify them and only get you a high quality list of booked meetings. That is one example where we have seen how an AI agent can automate a lot of the work that an SDR could do. But then I want you to think about the possibilities here, because the possibilities are endless. Again, we're working on a system right now that is using agents to help our customers with the RFP analysis process and writing proposals. We're building that for a company that receives more than 1,000 requests for proposal per year, which is a crazy amount of proposals if you think about it. That's on average 3 proposals per day, right? So 3 RFPs, sorry, per day. And some of these RFPs are like hundreds of pages with so many attachments. It's never a single document. It's like a document with 20 appendices or something like that. And it's very hard to take a quick decision for go or no go. And sometimes they have a huge crunch of time. They need to respond to those RFPs in a matter of days, and they don't have the capacity, so they drop the whole thing altogether. They could be losing millions of dollars just because they don't have the capacity, right? So what we're building for them is an agentic solution that can do a lot of things in terms of defining the go or no go decision for the RFP and have a very detailed analysis for the key sections in it. It can combine data from multiple sources, connect to their enterprise data for all historical proposals to do summarizations, extraction for key sections, evaluation criteria, clause analysis to understand if there are hidden clauses or risky clauses and so forth. If there are risky requirements, sometimes there is a hidden requirement, for example, that they haven't taken care of that down the road has hefty costs, like you need to deliver this under this kind of time frame and so forth, the need for third parties, etc. And then after that, have some sort of a proposal copilot that can help them write a killer proposal. And if you think about it, writing a killer proposal, it's not just a matter of going to ChatGPT and tell it like, hey, write me that proposal. Yeah, you can do that, but is that going to be a winning proposal? A winning proposal should grab the right team. So that's a functionality we're building for them. It's connected to all their HR system for all their employees, seeing which employee has the needed expertise and bringing in the right team with the right hierarchy and the right structure for that specific request for proposal. It's connected to their service catalog to understand all the services they are providing, to wisely choose the words on how to position these services to win in this opportunity. It can get some intel about the competitive landscape to better position against competition. It has a co-pilot experience where you can reiterate on different sections and so forth. But then the opportunities for agents are endless. You can have a recruitment automation agent that can run the recruitment process from resumes, matching to screening to qualifying candidates, reaching out to them, doing the initial interviews, and so forth. You can have an AI travel planner, right? Planning for the whole trip end to end based on different circumstances and requirements. Customer feedback is a classical one. We have been building customer support agents for different customers in the US and other countries to chat directly with customers, but then go the extra mile, resolving their complaints, issuing refund, doing order replacements, and so forth. A sales development agent like the ones we have seen, an investment research analyst. By the way, with the rise of deep research from ChatGPT and different things, the business of anyone in the business of doing research, I think it's very important for them to start leveraging these tools, right? I'm not sure if you guys have tried deep research or not, but it can do a fantastic job of researching so many things and coming up with a very detailed research and so forth. Automated content creator in terms of marketing. Those are all examples of agents. I want to share with you some examples for how other companies are using agents and generative AI in general today. ING Bank in Europe, it's a famous bank in Europe. It has partnered with McKinsey to migrate from the classical chatbot that was not using generative AI to a one that is using large language models, and they have seen 20% more customers using the chatbot. It's a huge amount if you think about it, and potentially about 37 million customers projected to use it. And I think one main reason here is because generative AI or large language models brings a more intuitive way of having conversation versus their very rigid approach of classical chatbots work. Duolingo is using it for educational experiences where it can act as a personalized tutor to help you with things. I can go on all the day, but I'm going to stop here. So yeah, I hope you like this. I definitely encourage you to dive deep into the realm of AI. I want to share with you a bunch of resources, one of which is the use case gallery that I talked about. These are 44 success stories. You can see a lot of logos that here, and we have built this for free to educate everyone on the possibilities of generative AI. You can see a summary for the entity, the specific use case they have applied, the outcome that they have achieved, including numbers in terms of ROI and stuff like that, if they mentioned, and the summary of the use case, the 3 main things they have done, and a link to the use case. Those are use cases in automotive, biotech, consulting, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, etc. And finally, there is a free course on YouTube called AI for Business. If you just Google AI for Business Omar, you're going to find it. It's a free course that I've recorded 7 episodes to help anyone start their AI journey. So yeah, I hope that was useful, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you, Omar, and thanks for sharing. That's great, and lovely to see all those different use cases. To my panel and to Mark and Fernando, do you have any additional questions while Omar is here?
Maybe look, just some feedback. Omar, I'd just like to say thank you. Some of the points here really resonated with me. I think that one about needing the business from day one is really key. And as a business architect, I think what's quite interesting is business seems to think that AI can solve everything, and it can't. What I've been doing is looking at the business from a capability perspective and then being very targeted and go, AI can assist on these specific capabilities. But just as you said, you need a lot of other skills around the edge as well. You mentioned there software engineering and data analysis, and of course the data quality is really important. That really resonated with me. The other one as well, which is almost like a pet project, is around small business. I look at ChatGPT and AI. It's almost that business advisor, as you say, of $20 a month or whatever. It's being able to ask questions about risk and forecasting, and should I increase my pricing, impacts of increasing salaries. I find that really fascinating what you can get out, and it's not likely to be 100% accurate, but it gets you a long way down the line to start to pose other questions. And that means that plumbers and vets can focus on their business, but they've got the capability. And I think it's really good what you were saying about spend 20 to 30 minutes a day, because your skills do jump up pretty quick.
That's awesome.
It was a very good explanation. What else can I say? I agree. It's great to be able to use this kind of tools. I do it every day, and I agree that helps a lot. That small stuff. I'm not an English person, so it helps a lot. And I work in a global company, so that's one of the use cases that I use it for. Evaluating documentation, for summarizing large documents, to compile large amounts of information. Yes, I think it's great. Of course, we cannot expect to have always the right answer. It's also up to us to be able to evaluate and to understand what is right, what is wrong, and to enhance a little bit or the question or the information that we are providing, so that we can reach that true answer. But it saves a lot of time. And I agree that for companies, I think I already test some POCs with the AI, and it's very easy to fail. And sometimes people give up to continue to pursue, because people are expecting AI to do everything every time, to get it right, and to have all the answers and to be like magic. And this is not like that, right? I agree, we need to find the right use case, to try several different approaches until we find the thing that will make the difference, and then we can scale from that. So thank you all, and Omar Maher for the wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
All right. I just want to say a huge thank you again, Omar. This has been awesome. I think we're ready to close the session. Personally, I'm really happy that you confirmed that architects can be a key role in this change, in bringing the business and AI together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Omar, for your insightful discussions. And I'm happy that I found some aspects that I can relate to when I talk to the clients about business architecture, that we can help you with your AI implementation that you are not able to do it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure, Omar. Thank you.
All right. So we'll call it a wrap for the day, and appreciate your time.